Hello and welcome to Cut Through the Noise. Cut Through the Noise is the podcast that helps business leaders increase sales through elevated communications and marketing. I'm your host, Aisling O'Rourke, the founder of The Communications Coach, based here in the Republic of Ireland. At The Communications Coach, we work with business leaders who want to communicate with clarity and confidence. And I'm delighted to be here with you for another episode of Cut Through the Noise. Hard to believe we're now in season 10 of the podcast. In this season of Cut Through the Noise, we're focusing in on a topic that's transforming how we work, how we connect, and really how we live, and that's artificial intelligence. And I'm focusing in on it in this series because it's become such a huge conversation in terms of marketing and communications in particular. Today, we're focused in on innovation. You see, too often when we think about innovation, we assume that it can only happen in really large companies with massive budgets and teams. And more often than not, that it only really happens in high-tech scenarios. But that's not the case. Innovation happens in small ways every single day. And with the advent of AI, we can now have the ability to innovate in wonderful ways to help us do our jobs to a higher standard and, more importantly, to help us find new ways of doing our jobs and offering services. So to share with us her tips and tricks, I'm delighted to be joined by Innovation Director Julie Creffield, and Julie is an everyday innovations specialist. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Well, hello, Julie Creffield, and welcome to Cut Through the Noise.
I am super excited to be here.
Now, Julie is an everyday innovations specialist. Julie, what does that mean exactly?
So, in a nutshell, I'm a business coach. That's what I do. But I help people understand that it's the everyday stuff that they go through that really needs to be turned on its head. Sometimes that's technology. Sometimes it's a bit more about creativity. Sometimes it's mindset. You know, we don't run our businesses in isolation from the other things that go on in our life. And so, you know, I bring a lot of that stuff together. I work a lot with tech startups and SMEs and companies of all shapes and sizes. And, you know, at the heart, we're all humans trying to do incredible things through the vehicle of entrepreneurship. It's messy, you know, and so sometimes those innovations are about how you juggle your home life more so than your product or your service. So that's why I talk about everyday innovation, because it's not separate from business. You know, it's one and the same thing. Sometimes, you know, creating a new system for how you get up in the morning and get your kids to school is equally as, you know, impactful on your business as, you know, getting your head around the latest bit of AI technology. So yeah, I'm all about kind of the reality of running a business rather than this kind of view of this, you know, utopian world, because I don't think anyone lives in that.
No, and I think you're right. Like there's so many books and YouTube videos and what have you about, you know, how to run a business in theory, but actually what we need is the practical day to day. Do you know what? This will actually make your life a bit easier advice. And I suppose that's what I always try to bring here with Cut Through the Noise. I'm very practical as a person. I come from the Midlands of Ireland. We tend to be very practical people. So it is important that we give practical advice. But I do like, and I heard you speaking a couple of weeks back now at the PSA in Dublin, where you mentioned this idea that when we think of innovation, we automatically think of robots and, you know, the massive tech giants. We don't necessarily think of innovation as being part of every business scenario, because sometimes we have this idea that we have to have billions of euro behind us before we can be innovative. Talk to me more about that.
Yeah, I think it's about really getting to the heart of what innovation is. You know, there is a little bit of a fear around it. There is this thing that, you know, the innovators are the ones with the money, the ones with, you know, access to information and technology that we don't have access to. I disagree with that totally. I think some of the most innovative things have come out of people with real hardship who figured out that something needs fixing, something needs solving. And innovation impacts every single one of us. I come from a very working class family. My great grandma had 18 children. And I think about what it would have been like for her well over 100 years ago. No air fryer, no washing machine, no dishwasher. Those innovations changed women's lives, right? So this isn't just about, big tech and data and all of that. It's about how can we use our products and services to make people's lives better, to make humanity better, to make things easier for ourselves. And so I like to bring things right back to basics. I have this thing called Icks, Slicks and Triggers, right? What are the Icks in my life, in my business, and how can I make them more of a slick? How can I make them smoother? How can I make them easier? How can I make them more joyful? And what are those triggers? What are those emotional triggers, the fear, the joy that gets in the way of putting new things in place? So often we go down these rabbit holes of tech, thinking that the tech will save us. Sometimes we don't even know what we want the tech to do. We don't know what's not working in our business. And so if we figure out what's not working, it means we're not always reinventing the wheel. I think it's more smaller innovations, smaller hacks, smaller ways of working that actually we see more results. It's those kind of incremental changes that we can make on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes that's just a post-it note, right? So I've got ADHD, I'm always forgetting things. And so sometimes the most innovative thing I can do is put a post-it note on my screen with my hex codes, right? Yes, I've got them saved somewhere in a digital, vault and all of that. But on a day-to-day level, I just need to be able to see them. They're on my screen, they're on a post-it note, they're bright pink. So sometimes the innovation, and if you think about it, post-it notes were one of the most incredible innovations, and we all use them now. So sometimes it's about going back to basics and asking yourself what's not working and what do I have within my resources, within my capability to make that tweak. And sometimes that tweak is a temporary one until a better solution comes along. But sometimes we buy into, both with our money and our time, technology that overwhelms us, and then it just becomes part of the problem rather than the solution.
Yeah, and then guilt comes with it. I live and die by my calendar and my to-do list because I find that if I don't have it written down somewhere, I do forget it. I also find it really helpful, and maybe it's an accountability piece, but I find that if I've told somebody else out loud that I need to do something particular tomorrow, I'm more likely to remember it by virtue of the fact that I've actually said it out loud, and also I have someone to say, hey, Aisling, did you remember to do such and such? Like a simple thing for me, and it is a tech one. I'm in the Google suite. That's what my software that I use is. And they have recently gotten rid of Google Keep and brought out Google Tasks. And now my to-do list is part of my calendar because I had this awful habit of writing a physical to-do list and then leaving it behind me when I left in the morning, or putting it in a new shiny app that I thought would be really helpful, but just forgetting to open it. And now it's actually embedded into my calendar. It's those small steps that make our lives easier, and AI can help a lot with that, can't it?
Totally. But one of the problems that we see is there are so many new tools on the market. And so we're constantly hearing people saying, this is the best tool for this is the best tool for that. And the truth is, lots of the tools do the same things. And so I actually think this is a lesson in understanding yourself. It's understanding the way you like to work. It's about testing things, trialing things. And when you find something that works, sticking with it rather than having that bright, shiny, oh, Julie said she uses that. I like Julie. She's successful. Maybe I should follow what she does. No, you've got to understand, what your personality's like, any restrictions that you have, what your business model is, and I think what we're going to see, I think, in AI, we're past the age of information now. We have information overload. I think it's going to be about deciphering information, and it's going to be about knowledge, and it's going to be about the application of your personal knowledge base, right? Yes, we're going to use AI to productize and to, be more productive and do whizzy things and be able to get to more people. But I think knowing oneself, which sounds a bit spiritual, but knowing oneself really deeply will enable us to use those tools to their best advantage.
I think you're right. For me, I call it magpie syndrome. And I've been like this since I was a child. I've always loved tech. So when there's a new piece brought out, I want it. I want to see how it works and whether or not it works for me. But again, I think we said this in our conversation last week with Liz Hardwick. Look at the pricing plan page of a particular app. Look at the specifications of the app and compare and contrast, because there's no point paying twice for a tool that does the same thing effectively. Talk to me about the tools that you use, because I know like you've built apps using AI. It is part and parcel of what you do in your day-to-day business.
Yeah, so I think most things can be done with a general large language model piece of kit. So whether that's Gemini, whether it's Copilot, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Claude, whatever your platform of choice is, most things that you need in your business can be done with that, in my view, right? And so I do have a number of tools that I use for different things. When you're starting to get to the point of productizing things in your business, then there are a whole suite of tools that you would have to go down a rabbit hole and explore. But I think it comes down to what is it you're trying to do. If you're using AI, and I think this is where most businesses are at the moment, they're using AI to do what they normally do better, right? So they're doing it to speed things up, to get clarity, to improve their copy. Some people are dabbling in automation, but I would say, and I've got no evidence of this, but I would say probably about 80% of small business owners are in the dabbling game. They're using AI to do things better and faster, right? I think that it's the other 20% that is the most interesting. And that takes time to get your head around the different tools and to think about not how can I do things better, but what can I do now that I couldn't do 5 years ago? If I had a magic wand 5 years ago and I was saying, if only I knew how to do X, Y, Z, that's what you should be asking ChatGPT. I want to do this. I've never been able to do it before because I didn't have the tech knowledge or the ability or the money or the networks or all of those things that I thought held me back. What would you suggest I now do? And what are the tools that enable me to do it? I think the people that look at their IP and the things that make them unique and use AI to leverage that, those are the ones that will come out winning. And with every new technology that comes in, you have the early adopters, you have people that take a little bit longer, the kind of late majority and the laggards. You've got to understand where you are in that, right? And I'm trying not to be judgmental here, but I can't help it. Just using it to improve your copy is such marginal gains. You know, everybody's using AI for copy now. How can you make it, more you, less AI speak? And it's not about the M dash, it's just how can I use it to leverage and dial up me? And then how can I use it to amplify? But I still think people are using it with business models that are inherently flawed, and so that requires us to look to the future. What is the future of my industry going to be like in 12 months? I heard a really interesting thing the other day about the speed in which things are changing. It took the motor car something like 46 years to get to 50 million users or 50 billion users. It took ChatGPT 2 months. That puts things into perspective, right? Our adoption speed is a lot faster. Imagine a world without Canva. It's really hard as a business owner, right? When I started one of my first online businesses, there wasn't Canva and I had no design skills. I was using PowerPoint to design flyers, right? Because that's all I had available to me, right? There has never been a better time to go into the online world and start a business and start monetizing your ideas. But it starts with knowing what is unique about you and what unique perspective you bring to these tools, because otherwise you're just generic like everybody else, playing around with the tools, following the gurus who tell you this is what you should be trying to do. Like, I think it's about asking yourself better questions. When you ask yourself better questions, who am I? What do I want? What's important to me? What do I value? Where do I think the world is going? What have I been through that nobody else has been through? What are 3 things that are unique about me and what are the intersections of those things? Those questions that you ask yourself, maybe journaling, maybe, in a Word document, and then you use AI to decipher some of that, right? To help you find those nuanced things. We always say when it comes to kind of AI prompting, it is about asking better questions. But I think you can go down rabbit holes on AI and end up in places where you're like, oh, this all just sounds like mush. Start with asking yourself better questions. I'm
No.
reluctant to talk about tools. I'm reluctant to say this one and that one and that one, because I don't want to send people off going, Julie said, go and check out this tool, because I don't think that's what we should be. I don't think that's the starting point.
I think you're right. And look, it is the journalist in me because that's my background. Asking important questions, asking useful questions,
Yeah.
better questions is the road to success. You're so right because, and I know it myself, I could spend hours trying to figure out the new latest tool because I enjoy it and I'm nerdy and that's fun for me. But I think it really is if you're in a business where you're looking for maybe small everyday wins, it's actually about looking at, like at this point, a lot of businesses will already have bought into an AI system. You know, whether it's Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or DeepSeek or like, the list goes on. So what can you do in that system that will help you make everyday wins? And really, instead of looking at what they can do on the surface, it's asking it better questions to see, you know, what it can help you do. You've used an AI tool to help you build an app to communicate with your clients better. And like, as I understand it, you're not a coder.
I'm not a coder. I'm not techie at all. I learn technology by figuring it out, by making mistakes. And so you're right. I developed a system, an AI system for myself, first and foremost. And this is kind of what I tend to do. I create something that solves a problem for me. Other people go, oh my God, you seem to have fixed that problem. Tell me about it. And then I go, oh, there's a market here. So what I did a year ago, I designed a custom GPT for me, and I did use ChatGPT to help me get on top of my health issues, right? So to lose weight, to get stronger, to get healthier, and all of those things. I used it for about 4 months, lost a heap of weight, and realized actually I'm onto something here. Developed the MVP a little bit better, put some guardrails in, really thought about what did I do that was different? You know, what's my thinking around weight loss? What's my thinking about change management? What's my thinking about change and transformation when it comes to something as triggering as weight loss? I built all of those things into the app. So now it's no longer just a custom GPT. It is now a methodology, right? And so that methodology I then tested with 100 individuals, 100 humans. I think it's close to 200 people that have now been through it. I'm writing a book called How to Lose Weight with the Help of AI. I've lost 100 pounds in 11 months using technology as an accountability partner, right? So that's a very unique use case for
It's
technology.
pretty phenomenal, if you don't mind me saying so.
Thank you very much. But it's just really made me think about what other real problems can we solve for ourselves, for our clients, for the world. The technology is the enabler. We are the experts. We have to drive together with this stuff. The tech can't do it for yourself, you know, by itself. You know, if you just use AI and ask it what to eat, it will give you some stuff. It will be biased. It will be dragging stuff from the internet. You know, do you trust that? So it's really important that we have ethics, that we still listen to experts, that we don't just trust anything that comes out of AI, that we understand how AI is being used. It's not magic. We have to be the drivers of the change that we do, either personally or professionally. We have to be in charge.
And that's such a valuable point. Like, we're speaking in the wake of that global AWS systems outage at the same time as Amazon is laying off thousands of staff around the world because they want to employ more AI systems and physical robots in their warehouse. There's so much fear around AI right now that I think there are people, like you say, who are dabbling. There are those that think it's evil and are avoiding it altogether. And then we have that small group in the middle, the early adopters, that are really thinking, well, do you know what? It's here to stay. How can it work better for me?
I've always been an outlier, right? I've never stuck with a job for more than 2 years. I've done a million things in my life. I lead with curiosity. I'm so curious about how the world works, where it's going, who we are, you know, what the point of it all is. So I do genuinely think people like me will be fine. Where I think we're going to really find people coming unstuck is when they get so rigid about who they are, what their expertise is, and what they want to do in the world. If the world changes and there's not a place for that, then they're in trouble, right? And so I've got a 12-year-old, I've got to prepare her for the world of work. I don't know that I will prepare her for a profession of one sort. What I want to do is really ramp up her critical thinking, really ramp up her desire to learn, really ramp up her ability to switch from a project to project and to be open and to have great people skills and to be curious about the world. I think it's those skills, and obviously being able to use AI and being able to use technology. This idea of being in a job for life is long gone. You know, I believe that was long gone 40 years ago, but you know, there are still people that buy into that. I'm going to learn a thing. I'm going to do it for 40 years. I'm going to be the best at it. And then, you know, we now have AI that can pretty much do things as good as, you know, some of the top experts in terms of information. You know, so if we're just talking about experts being people that share information, that's not enough anymore. It's got to be the application of that learning. It's got to be the application of that knowledge. It's got to be deciphering it and enabling people to embed it. So there is definitely still a space for experts, but the world is changing whether we like it or not. I was at a conference, I was moderating a panel, big tech conference. It was all about people power in the age of AI. And there was a guy from the government that said that they did this big kind of audit, and they said by 2030, 40% of local governments could, not should or not will, but could be outsourced by AI. And local government is the biggest, you know, the biggest employer in the UK. So when you look at that context, there's no point in going, I don't agree with it. It's bad for the environment. Like all of those things may or may not be true. But the point is the change is coming. You know, the barn doors are open. There is no stopping AI. It's now about how do we put safety nets in place to ensure that we don't lose our humanity in whatever's coming next.
We're all about practical here on Cut Through the Noise. And for people who follow us on YouTube, we like to have a bit of bonus content. So, Julie, you know, we've talked here about how we can ask better questions of AI, regardless of what AI platform we're using. What are your top tips for people who are in that, maybe that top 10, top 20%, who really want to get AI to help them elevate their business?
Yeah, I think it starts with your business model. I think it starts with saying, what does my current business look like? You know, how does it all fit together? And if I had a magic wand, what would my preferred model be? Right. So this is a practical thing you can do. And I would sketch it out on paper, you know, draw out your current model. That's what it's currently like. Look at the icks and slicks, what's working, what's not working, where are the emotions, the highs and the lows of your current model. Then do a second version is magic wand. How would I like it to be? Right. And then you look at where all the emotion sits. Where am I afraid? What feels good? That would be amazing. Oh, what would my mum say? You know, so that's version 2. Then I would do a version 3, which is like, what could my business model look like in, say, 2030, 2050? Like, where there are no limits, where there are, you know, like, go as big as you can. And what I would say, when you look at those 3 side by side, you will find where AI is going to help you the most.
Okay. And if people are listening to us talking about, like at the end of the day, regardless of what platform you're using, it is about prompting the AI to do a certain thing for you. And we've said several times now about asking better questions. So what, for people who haven't quite grasped that idea just yet, what does that look like? What does a good question look like when it comes to AI?
I think it all comes down to context, right? So you could go in, you could do that kind of, let's say the blue sky thinking version, right? Magic wand, if it all worked out perfectly, what would my perfect model look like? You could run that through AI and you could say, what would Julie Creffield say about this version of my business model? Right. And because AI knows me, because I've got lots of content online, you will probably get a Julie Creffield quite straight down the line, few Julieisms, you'll get my perspective on that. You could probably say, what would Stephen Bartlett say about this business model? You could probably put that into AI and say, act like the leading futurist who speaks on AI. What do they think about this business model? You could probably say, what would my mum think about it? What would my kids think about it? So it comes down to perspective. What would a PR strategist think about my current business model? What would a chief technology officer say about this business model? What would a coder say? Because they're all coming with it from a different perspective. What I think that does is it gives you color. It gives you an opportunity for you to go, okay, so they all think this. Now, what do I think? It's like building a board of advisors, right? But ultimately, we have to come out of all of that, make a decision. It's only us that can make that decision, and then actually make it happen in the real world. I think a lot of people are spending a lot of time in AI, which is make believe, and then they come out and they carry on doing the same old shit they've always done in their business. So they do all of this creative, interesting, rabbit holey stuff. But remember, it's all still pie in the sky. You're the individual that has to actually make it happen. And we've got to kind of be able to come in and out of the technology, and do things in tangible ways that are about action, that are about driving your business forward in real life ways.
Well, Julie Creffield, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Cut Through the Noise today. Thank you very much for your time.
I have loved it. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Julie Creffield today. I know that I did, and I know I'll take a lot away from the chat that we had. My key takeaways from the conversation are really quite simple, but if implemented, will have a profound impact for you and your business. First thing, we have to remember that innovation is about making life and work better, not about buying new pieces of technology. Secondly, if we really want to innovate, we need to learn about asking better questions and then take real-world action. When we're using AI tools to help us innovate, we have to really focus in on the prompts that we're providing. And in particular, instead of just asking for ideas and suggestions, we need an execution list. So make sure that you're asking for implementation steps. Make sure that every AI session ends with a list of actions that you are going to take. And of course, we must remember that we need to treat AI as an enabler, not an authority. Check your facts, keep your expert input, check your bias, and understand the limitations of the platform that you are working within. At the end of the day, you are the expert. AI is just the tool. That's it for today's episode of Cut Through the Noise. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you'd like to find out how we can explore these strategies and how they might work for your brand, you can get in contact with me. Email me at hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie. Check out thecommunicationscoach.ie, or even connect with me on LinkedIn. And yes, I promise, all of those links are in the show notes below. As always, thank you for listening to Cut Through the Noise with myself, Aisling O'Rourke. If you enjoy what we do here, please do give us a 5-star rating and give us a comment on the episode that you enjoyed the most, or even write us a review. It all helps to get our podcast out to a bigger audience. Remember, we live in a noisy world, so you need to communicate with clarity, confidence, and authenticity if you want to stand out from the sea of sameness and cut through the noise.